This is the Instant Speed Podcast, episode number 40, but it's kind of episode number 1, and I'll explain to you why. Basically, we had a guest today that would be Mr. Matt Rogers, who unfortunately had a slight emergency, a lot going on in Rogersville. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring him on next week, and he promised he's going to give us some really, really sweet, juicy details about a bunch of stuff that he's working on, some cool new projects that you want to hear about. So we're going to bring Matt Rogers in next week. But what I've got for you today is a little bit different. The long-lost pilot episode of Instant Speed. Before we, partnered up with 983 Media, before we had any sponsors, before you even knew I existed, we had an episode 1 that never aired on 983 Media. So we're going to bring it to you this time. But before we do that, we're going to update the facts for you. Nationals have been announced. Yes, Nationals. Now, I can bring you the dates for two big events. That would be Canada having the Nationals occur between September 16th and 18th. USA will be in North Carolina, September 23rd to the 25th. Canada is going to be in Ottawa, I should mention. There's also a bunch of battle hardens between now and then. So if you do want that extra little dip into the competitive pool, you can put your foot into these various different battle hardened tournaments. There's going to be one in Toronto. That would be at Anime North this weekend. That would be between September 15th and 17th. There's also an RTN, a whole bunch of stuff going on over there. You need to have a ticket to Anime North to attend, so keep that in mind. There's one in Minneapolis happening between September 30th and October 2nd, and another Battle Hardened happening in Denver between October 29th and October 30th. I believe also there's one happening in Los Angeles, and a really cool casting crew are going to be involved with that one as well, some good friends, so you might want to check it out. That's one I wish I could be at, but I can't. So, Fitness Challenge rages on. Yes, hashtag Fab Fitness Challenge. Feeling good. I'm really dedicated to it. It's been about 2 weeks. I haven't had a shred of chocolate or sugar or any of that, and you can tell I'm losing my mind. But I feel great. Lots of good walks, and the community themselves have been all about it as well. So big ups to the community who have really been putting, their money where their mouth is when it comes to wellness, be it mental, physical, and all that stuff. So big ups again for everybody who's making great strides during the Fab Fitness Challenge. Did you know that Instant Speed has a Discord? You've all heard of the Discord that doesn't exist. This one does exist. So if you want to join the Instant Speed Podcast Network, well, there's a Discord for that. Lots of great people having good conversations, sharing support, stories, questions. Just get connected with the community. You can go ahead and find us and check us out on Twitter at Instant Speed Pod as well. And finally, I want to give a big, big thank you, as always, to our Patreon members. You guys are awesome. And you do keep the lights on here at Instant Speed at 983 Media, so thank you for your support. We will never put any content behind paywalls. That's not what we want to do here. We want to make sure that you get what you need, but if you want to support the podcast, you can do so for as little as $1 a month, and it goes so far. So thank you to all our Patreon members. Again, this is Instant Speed episode number 40, but we're taking you to the Wayback Machine to bring you the pilot with Tannon Grace. All right, for the first guest of the Instant Speed Podcast, we welcome the Tannon Grace to the show, who is a competitive Magic the Gathering player, poker pro, as well as the host of the MTG Rants podcast. But most notably, and most importantly at this moment right now, was at the desk for the calling in Las Vegas for Flesh and Blood, calling all the action, having casted the thrilling finals match. And it's good to have you on the show. Thank you so much for doing this.
Absolutely, Flake. Anytime.
Awesome. So now the first question is, we got to do a little bit of origin story, as always. I mean, a lot of people may know you, but they may not know about your integration into Flesh and Blood, your interest in it and such. So where did that spawn? Where did that sprout?
Okay, so this is going to be an interesting story, especially if you watched all this weekend and kind of really listened to what I was saying. This will probably give you some better background on that stuff. So, I do not have the in-depth knowledge in Flesh and Blood that I would want, especially for the show that we did this weekend. I was notified about 2 to 3 weeks before that show, before we filmed this, 2 days ago, that I would be doing it. And I had never played a game or seen anything of Flesh and Blood before then. So you're looking at the culmination of me finding out I knew about the game, obviously, but had no involvement in it for those few weeks. and I full dived into it, watched everything I could get my hands on YouTube, any other form of Flesh and Blood content that I could get. Mostly after that, you're looking at articles because, like you said, the game is supposed to be played in the Flesh and Blood. So there's not, an online variant, right? Like when you think of games like poker or Magic, you can just go download one of their games online and play it that way, right? So if that was a thing, I could have gotten way up to speed way quicker, right? By getting my hands physically on the things or digitally on the things and playing that way. So I just full dove into it, learned as much as I could. We had a curveball, and quite a curveball get thrown into it, where I got hit by the hurricane. I live in South Louisiana, so I lost power for 5 days during those 2.5 weeks. So I did not get to do as much research as I wanted, but I made sure that I found all the top decks in the meta, like the 4 or 5 or 6 that we would for sure see, Chane, that kind of stuff.
4 or 5 iterations of Chane plus extra spice, yeah.
Sure, yeah. And so I think you can hear it in my calling in some of the matches where I'm way more sure of what I'm saying when it has to come with the Chane decks or something like that. But if certain classes got on screen, I was like, man, I just don't know these cards. I'm sorry, I just didn't have time to learn all this because, in 2 or 3 weeks, there was no time for me to learn every single card in the game and learn matchups and learn ideas of what's going on and things like that. So I focused on learning as much as I could, as deeply as I could for the show, and then leaned on my co-casters who absolutely knocked it out of the park, to make yet another baseball analogy here. But overall, it was a great weekend, and I had a very fun time. And I now own quite a bit of Flesh and Blood cards. There are some local guys to me who play, so I've been playing with them and just learning everything I can. I love games like this, so if you don't see me doing commentary on all the events coming up, you may see me there as a competitor sometime soon, because I think this game's great.
Well, and let's be completely fair here. You all did an excellent job, and I'm not just saying that because, you're on the podcast and whatnot, but I mean, in reality, the broadcast itself was phenomenal. Like you mentioned, they knocked it out of the park. But I mean, let's be fair. Again, to use another baseball analogy, if you hit a double off the wall, you still count as a run. That's still in there. Yep. So that you're still putting runs up on the board. But you mentioned that you're getting into it. You're new to this. You obviously have a background in CCGs and competitive card gaming, poker as well. A game like Flesh and Blood has essentially, for those who are so integrated into it, who are so intimate with this game, to us, it's one of the biggest things out there, obviously. But in comparison to some of the other juggernauts that exist, namely Magic: The Gathering, which has a foothold for decades, but in various medium, digital, paper, obviously, where it started, but just the competitive scene, the local game stores having events, multiple times a week. How can this compete with something as strong and as deeply rooted in the paper format as Flesh and Blood?
That's a good question. I think that hits on multiple layers, right? So there might be multiple answers. I think one of the first things that I would say to any company like this is you can learn from Magic, right? Magic has been around since the early 90s. I think I played my first game in 1994 or 1995. I was about 10 years old. I was born in the mid 80s. And so, yes, I'm old. I'm aware. Going back to then, you're looking at a game that has such a rich history as a paper game before there was any kind of digital product, and then had the digital product, right? So you can learn, what they did right, what they did wrong from those things. But the biggest thing you want to do is to be true to yourself. And that goes further, being true to your fans, right? And as we saw this weekend, and I'm sure you're going to get into on the show, or you may have already done that, is you saw quite the show up by the people this weekend, right? The fans of the show. I mean, there was 903 people in the Friday event. There was over 750 people in the main event, and that's astronomical numbers for what's going on in the country right now. Everyone within Channel Fireball, within Flesh and Blood, would consider this a wild success. And I think you can also learn from some of the mistakes that have happened in games like Magic: The Gathering, where you try to fly too close to the sun. You try to do too much too fast. And just be true to yourself, be true to the people that are playing the game, and don't alienate your fan base. Don't do anything too crazy. I feel like the people who make this game really have a good head on their shoulders and have really been pushing this the right way and have been doing it at the speed at which they're doing it has been great. And I think this is a really good time to kind of capitalize on that need and that want that everybody has in their life that has been kind of vacated by a lot of the games going away or pushing more digital over the last few years to have something to play in the flesh and blood. So that's what I would say, is just do what they're doing and make sure you do it well. Like, trying to do too much has been the death knell of a lot of games that I thought had really promising starts to like the game's career, right? The game being shown to people.
So is this a flash in the pan? You think, like you mentioned, that this is just the fact that there's a need for this right now because people have been essentially isolated away from what they've been so passionate about for a long time. I know for me, one of my regular Saturday afternoon activities was to go play Sealed, some sort of limited format at my local game store, go grab a burger on the way home. And I couldn't do that for years. Been, and it's weird to say years, but it's legitimately been year plus X at this point. And is this just the fact that there's just pent up aggression isn't the right word, but
I think aggression works, though. Pent up aggression, yeah.
Like, 903 people at the main event on Friday is a ridiculous amount of people, or 750 or so that actually participated in the main event. Is this just the fact that it's this urge that has just essentially been radiating and just gathering, this gathering storm that's finally burst? And I mean, could it be that in Cincinnati in a few weeks, is that going to be the barometer? Is that the event that's going to essentially be the measuring stick for the popularity or the strength of this game?
So to answer your first question, do I think this is a flash in the pan? If you asked me 5 months ago, absolutely, I would have said I think it is. It's like just another game that you hear about coming and go. You'll hear about it. It wasn't even in my local store. Maybe a year ago. I don't know. I didn't go to my local store as much lately, right? But I have watched it grow at my LGS from a few people playing it to now more people play it in person than play Magic the Gathering. And, there's fan pages everywhere too. So while I would have said yes months and months ago, and not just because I'm involved in it, about a month or two ago, one of my buddies who's really into stuff and has his own LGS, he's like, this game's for real. Like, people love it. It's got almost like a cult-like following, overseas. Please don't take that the wrong way. If anybody's hears this, and English might not be their first language, I think I'm being very sarcastic with that. But I definitely don't think this is going to be a flash in the pan whatsoever. I think this game's going to be around for years and stuff, building on this. As for the upcoming events, I think it's good that you mentioned Cincinnati. And nothing against the cities, right? We have 4 cities that are getting callings, one of which is getting a double up, right? Orlando's getting a calling and nationals. But when you look at all 4 of the cities, right, you look at Las Vegas, Dallas, Cincinnati, Orlando, one of them sticks out, right? Like, one of them is not like the other, and that's Cincinnati. And when you think of like big tourist destinations with fun stuff to do, things around it, kind of a city that is known for, people going there, having a lot of fun, tourism, things like that. Cincinnati's not one that jumps out at you. And I'm sorry, people from Cincinnati, if you're listening to this, I'm not trying to hate on your city. It's just,
there's some Bengals fans that are just like stewing right now.
Well, they got enough to be mad at with their football team. Yes. They don't need to be mad at me. By the way, go Joe Burrow. But anyway, but like when you think about, you think of Orlando and you think of like, Disney World, Universal Studios, a lot of fun stuff to do. Their beaches, right? When you think of Dallas, like, you think of a bunch of sports teams. It's a huge city with a very diverse culture, great food. You can't say enough about Vegas, right? Like, entertainment capital of the world. I'm not surprised the numbers were as huge as they were, being the first event and Vegas. That's like, if you want to guarantee your city having, a big showing for an event, Vegas is the one you go to, right? Like, that is your go-to city. So I think Cincinnati is a good barometer. Like you were saying, it's a good one to test this, because I think Dallas and Orlando, they already have like a rich amount of people around them. Dallas has infinite people that play card games there. Same thing with Florida. So I'm hoping Cincinnati brings it. You know what? Everybody at home, I'm challenging you right now. If you're listening to this and you want to make me eat my words or whatever, show up to Cincinnati. I'm going to be there. Make me eat my words. Have a bunch of people show up. We'll have some fun. We'll play some flesh and blood, and come tell me how wrong I was. But like, I wouldn't be surprised to see the numbers take a dip there, but maybe the Midwest has just been looking for this, and so they're gonna actually flock to that. And maybe it's the biggest one. I wouldn't be utterly surprised if it happened.
Well, there's like it's a double-edged sword in a certain regard, because there's a possibility even where everybody, you're right. I mean, the sparkle of Cincinnati isn't the same as, the lights and shine of Las Vegas, obviously. But there might be a situation perhaps where people have seen what these callings can be like, and they're, the loss of interest because it's not Las Vegas might be picked up from the people who are saying, you know what, I missed out on Las Vegas.
Good point.
Let's go to this. And I know that I was one of those people. I was geared up, ready to go. Unfortunately, COVID is what it is, health issues, etc. It just didn't happen. Cincinnati is a nice, it's closer. It's not as, big of a like I said, a sparkling city, but it's a possibility. So we'll see. And I like what you're saying there. One of the greatest things would be perhaps a follow-up episode of the Instant Speed podcast where Tannon Grace shows up and tells me all 900 names of the people that told him he was wrong. That would be amazing.
I will take the hour that it takes to do it, my mea culpa, whatever you want to call it. I'll say I'm sorry a million times. I'll write a love letter to the city of Cincinnati.
I'm all for it. You and Pete Rose together can both do it.
Yeah, sure.
So the other thing about Flesh and Blood, obviously, is the fact that the name itself, Flesh and Blood, I mean, this has been beaten to death by now, but is this a mistake? And I know that this is a bigger question, but just distancing itself from the digital media. There's no online platform officially for this. Obviously, people kind of skirt around it with the tabletop simulator, etc. But
right.
This has just been really hammered down real tight that the developers are saying, no, we're not developing anything about this. We want people to sit across from each other and play cards.
I don't think it's a miss, right? There's something to be said about like we know what we are. Like, this is what we want to do. We're going to stick to it. I think being 100% firm and saying they'll never do anything digital might be a small mistake. And so I have a business minor from a good business school, and that part of me is like, you're missing out on so much money, when it comes to it. Like, can you imagine playing Flesh and Blood on your phone while you're taking your bus to work, or, you're taking your commute to wherever, so obviously digital products are the future of card games, but at the same time, you're also hitting that nostalgia, right? Because, I messed around with, Hearthstone. I was big into Magic and stuff like that. And in Hearthstone, one of my favorite things that I have from Hearthstone is a physical card that my now wife, my then girlfriend at the time, she got me turned into a Hearthstone card. And I have a physical copy of it, in a hard case at my house. And then a few of my other personal favorite cards, she got me physical copies of it because I have such a nostalgia with that, right? I've got cards I've owned since the 90s, that have concrete scrapes on the back of them, because when we were kids, the way you had your cards were you put a rubber band around them, you put them in a sandwich bag, and you brought them to school, because we didn't have sleeves back then, right? We didn't know to take care of all this stuff that was going to be worth thousands of dollars and stuff like that now. So there is something to be said about just steering into, what you are, and, consistency, right? With your people at home. This is always going to be a physical thing. And so I do think they might be missing out on some money somewhere, but if that is not their main goal, which, let's be honest, that's great if it's not their main goal, because we've seen some games definitely die or become worse by making decisions purely made by profit. So yes and no, I think is my answer.
All right, I get what you're saying there. I mean, by just staying sort of firmly into that element of this is a game that you play in person, I mean, there's, you're really adhering to the romanticism of the card game genre.
Absolutely.
And the personality of it. And I completely agree with you. But, when it comes down to dollars and cents, I mean, it seems like it's not as deep in terms of mechanics that exist as other card games might, like Magic or others that have so many different triggers and interactions. I feel like this is something that would be fairly easy to do, but it's just the not doing it part that is part of, I guess, the culture or the mantra of the developers. And I can respect that, because for now it seems like it's great. And the fact that I go out to my local game stores, once or twice a week for these little events, these armories, these little, matchups, I love it, because it also creates a local meta versus whatever the internet meta is that boils down. If everybody's playing Chane at one store, maybe the other store is loaded with prisms. It changes how you sort of see things. So I'm all for it as well. And speaking of local metas and such, the fact that this game is still relatively new, and everybody culminating into this massive event in Las Vegas that you got to cast, which is awesome to see in general, the quality of play that you got to see. Now, everybody's fresh in this, and you were mentioning that you yourself as a caster are just as green as a lot of these players who, at the very best, some of these players have not been playing for upwards of a year. They're still pretty down pat with they might be down pat with what they're playing, but there's nobody out there who is the hard knocks elder statesman who's been there from the beginning. I mean, they exist obviously, but it's not the same as somebody who's like, I've been there since alpha for Magic. I know everything inside out. I've been playing. I've 26 or 27 years of experience. The quality of play for this game, how would you rate it? The games that you got to cast, how would you rate the quality of players?
I was impressed, honestly. It's not that I expected low quality play, and let's be honest, I'm not the expert in calling out, if someone's play was super high quality or super low. But overall, I was super, super impressed. We had a players to watch list of the people that were known players, had won RTNs, won multiple RTNs, were known as some of the best players, or were some of the highest rated players in their area. We kicked it off with Dante Delfico in round 1, who ended up making top 8. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, I just want to throw it in there. Beat him in draft in Monarch a couple weeks ago. Just saying.
There you go.
Just saying.
That's a good feather in your cap. That kid is really good.
Yeah, we're from the same city, and he's usually at the same LGS. Is really cool dude as well. And very secretive. Always in the corner with his playtest partner. Doesn't let anyone watch, and we respect that.
Yeah, and I think part of that isn't necessarily there's some stuff there, right? He's trying to, keep his edge, stuff. But I think he's actually just he didn't really necessarily want to be on camera. And I'm like, buddy, you're going to be on camera this weekend if you win at all. You're one of the best players in the room. You're very good. We're going to want to watch you play, that kind of thing. And he'll get more used to it as he goes, but he's definitely a reserved person, I think is the best way to put this, right? He doesn't throw himself out there, kind of I wouldn't say I'm the exact opposite of it, but I'm definitely a very public person when it comes to this stuff. I'm very public facing. I'm very open about everything. I'm I'll give you my deck list ahead of time. Here you go. I don't care, kind of thing. And that's not a bad thing on either side. It's not I'm not saying there's a good or bad way to do it, but overall the quality of play was really, really good. We saw it the whole weekend through. There wasn't too many times where I'm that's a glaring mistake. And honestly, I'm trying not to do that too often in the booth because A, who am I to say that over some of these people? But B, sometimes I definitely saw some people maybe not understand their role in a matchup. They knew they were supposed to attack their opponent, but maybe not exactly how. Or maybe and it's what you said, right? They're relatively new. This is the first real big event in North America. So this might be one of the biggest things that some of these players have ever played in. They even talked about it on the cast about being in the situation that some of these people were in, super late in a tournament. You can't really afford to lose anywhere. You got a round or two left and your back's against the wall and you have to win out and hope. And that can get to you, right? And I didn't see any spots where a glaring, mistake was made out of nerves, greenness, anything like that. Overall, the play was really, really good, this whole weekend. And I wanted to add one more thing when it comes to that too. And it wasn't just the play that impressed me this weekend, but it was the attitude of everyone involved as well. Players, judge staff from Channel Fireball, just everyone was excited to be there, right? You mentioned the two games that I'm known for the most and I've been around the most. It's poker and Magic, and you get kind of those players can be known for being a little salty, right? Magic players can be a little whiny, a little salty. Poker players definitely can be really salty, especially when they lose, because the only way we keep track of who's winning or not, we keep track with money. So that can be a really hard thing for people to do. You're oh yeah, I did not do well this week. Well, that means I lost a lot of money, right? I didn't just lose matches. It's quantifiable by stuff going out of my bank account, kind of thing. So
yeah, that hurts real hard. That stings.
Yeah. And so I played the world premiere. I played all 6 rounds because I just wanted the experience, right? And not just the experience of playing the game. I wanted the experience of playing in that. And everyone, the energy in the room was palpable, right? Everyone was excited. When the people opened the fables, the whole room went nuts. One got opened only a couple tables away from me. And every content creator just rushed over there with their cameras. The dude, it's he had just he got a golden ticket, right? You know what I mean? Out of the candy bar, and everybody was just he was posing for the pictures, and then playing all of my rounds. I remember one of my opponents, I just ran him over, right? And I don't mean that I played better than him or whatever. It's just his deck didn't function super well. It didn't work out, and mine just curved perfectly. And he was genuinely excited afterwards. He was hey man, great games. I can't wait to get to the next round and play some more. And I was just usually in Magic, I try to be very reserved after that, very quiet. If they say something, I'll say something back. I'll be like, hey, it was nice to meet you. They don't say anything, blah, 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 right? Just kind of quietly go about my thing. But everyone this weekend was like, fist bumping, shaking hands, doing whatever, high-fiving if you were okay with touching people. The cosplayers this weekend were top notch. Everyone looked exactly like the cards. It was amazing, male and female, both sides doing amazing things. Just, I loved all of it. It was a once in a lifetime experience, and I can't wait to do it again.
That's one thing I gotta just add on to is the fact that you're right. The attitude of the players from competitives. I've done 3 different RTNs, and one of the most exciting things for me was losing a match to a deck that I had never faced off in my entire life, and it was essentially a Bolton Saber come at you with just a bunch of Luminas and just swinging that thing like just a windmill of fury towards me, and. It was the first time I had ever, experienced this. I had heard of it. I did not know how it operated, but I sat back and basically the guy that I was playing against, I had met him once or twice before. And when it occurred, I basically just asked him, I said, this is it, right? I have no cards in hand. You're completing you're going the whole way right down to the final station, right? And he's like, yeah. I said, this is incredible. I'm like, just walk me through this because I want to see how you're doing 28 damage to me in one foul swoop. And it happened. And it was the most brilliant thing. And again, it was a situation where they were excited to pull it off. I was excited to get absolutely dusted by this combo. But moving forward in that, I spent a couple minutes afterwards where he explained to me the important parts of that deck and how it worked. 2 matches later, I faced off against another Bolton combo and I beat it. And it was because of that interaction. And and I cannot stress this enough, the fact that everybody I have played with, everybody I've interacted with in this game, within this sphere, has been exceptional and has been very, very engaging and welcoming and like you said, excited. And I wish I could have been there just to see, like you said, the rush of the first person. It's not just the first person to pull a Fable in that room. It's the first person to pull that Fable from that set ever. And that itself is phenomenal. So before we just wrap up here, we're going to take this just to the end here, which was the Chane versus Prism final, which you got the privilege of casting, and just walk us through that. Just the thoughts of you being there. It's your first. It's essentially the first cast ever, the first major event ever broadcast with an official air to it, so to speak. You're casting the final. It's Chane versus Prism. The first thing I want to ask you is. Surprise, obviously, that it's Chane in the final, and surprise that it's Prism in the final.
Not surprised by Chane. After all the research that I did going in, I expected Chane to do well. It overdid my expectations. I think it was like 44%. I think of the day 2 meta, it was 5 of the top 8 decks. We only had 3 decks in top 8. I think it was 1 Dash, 2 Prism, 5 Chane. So I kind of expected that, right? Like I expect Chane to be the first living legend hero in this game as well, just because of how broken I think it is. But we'll see with what happens. Everyone keeps thinking the next set's going to be the death of Chane. But one thing in every card game that I've ever seen is when a deck is this good or this far ahead of a lot of the other things that they can usually adapt to be good enough to beat the others. So we'll see. I mean, that's a thing that might not happen. I was sort of surprised to see Prism in the finals. I didn't really have it on my radar as being one of the top contenders coming in. Maybe, in the upper echelon, right? Like in the upper half of the heroes, but not, definitely not one, maybe not even second or third. But after seeing, Tyler won it, right? That's the guy's name, Tyler, if I remember right correctly. Yeah, Tyler, yeah. I didn't want to say his last name. I knew I was going to get it wrong. But watching Tyler play for 3 or 4 rounds of the tournament, I was not only impressed with his deck, but impressed with his play. Because if you go back and watch his matchups, he plays through the gauntlet, right? Like he plays aggro matchups, plays control matchups. And you could tell he plays at the same pace the entire time. And he plays very confidently, like he understands his matchups, but he plays the deck completely different in a lot of those matchups. And you could tell that he found the right deck for that weekend, right? His Prism deck was not only good against Chane, which he said he was 7-1 against in the weekend, but I watched his matchup versus other control decks, and it did not seem close. Like, if you would have lost to another control deck, I don't know what I would have done. I didn't think it was possible. He was so far ahead of him the way that his deck plays out. And, you're talking about he played against 8 Chane decks that week, and it went 7-1. So that's a big indictment on how good his deck is. And the Chane players, maybe need to adapt, to what's going on in the format to beat them, and B, just understand that deck because it's probably going to be pretty popular now, even though I understand it's very expensive. People might not have all the cards they need for that deck, but the thing is, once you understand a deck a little bit more, you can attack it from a better angle, if you get what I'm saying. Because, there's some stuff that said, maybe in the finals, had the Chane player understood the matchup or knew the cards a little more, had seen the deck list other than right before the game starting, he might have had a better chance of winning that game, kind of thing. So just absolutely great finals. And to kind of answer the other part, I was honored to be a part of the finals, right? To be one of the two casters in the seat to actually do the finals. And, we had talked about this, the whole group of Armada, Red Zone Rogue, and I talked about that. It was a great honor to be a part of that this weekend because, like you said, it's the first big one with like an official feel to it, right, that had ever been done. And we got to do it. We were the first people to do it. So we shaped the narrative moving forward, right? We wanted to come up with phrasing, or certain things like that, the way the cast was done, a certain level of professionalness, a certain level of casualness. All of it builds off of that, right? All of it builds off of us. And I wasn't trying to make us nervous. I was like, this is an amazing opportunity that we have. And so getting into the finals, I was a little bit nervous, but I felt really comfortable because I was pretty comfortable casting Chane games. And then that sounds like a weird phrase. And then I had cast Tyler playing Prism all day long. I felt like I kind of understood his deck pretty well, right? So I got to cast the final. I got to lean on Armada quite a bit because that kid's a superstar, by the way. I think he's going to be an absolute superstar playing or casting this game, whatever he wants to do. I'm surprised the guys are just flooding in followers right now. So do yourself a favor if you're listening and you haven't followed Armada, make sure you go do that. But I felt confident enough, and then I just kind of wanted to make sure that I was, without overdoing it, without overhyping it. I didn't want to turn into a WWE announcer. I wanted to stress the gravity of what was going on, and in those last couple turns, like the gravitas of like, we're getting closer, right? Like Tyler's getting very, very close. Is this going to be the last turn of the match? Is this the last turn we're going to see before Chane loses the finals and this Prism deck takes home the first calling before Tyler gets this trophy, kind of thing? Because it's an awkward spot in as a player too to sit there and play through those games because I've won big tournaments for some games or come really close in other games, and playing out those last few turns, like, it's very different than anything else you play in. So I was hoping people at home kind of got that feeling, and I think they did, especially like seeing Tyler afterwards and how happy he was. And I want to say this too, I got to hand him his prizes, I got to hand him his trophy and hand him his golden tunic. And while that tunic's worth just a bajillion dollars, right? It's worth so much money. You could see the pride on his face of him winning the tournament. You could see the reaction on him on the players cam when he wins the tournament, and then him hoisting that trophy. There's like a really good GIF on Twitter of him hoisting the trophy, and you could tell he was just so proud to have won that event. I love seeing that out of a player.
I mean, there obviously the value of that tunic is, from a monetary standpoint, is great. The money that he's won as well, but I think you're right, and I think that there's actually a lot of the pride. I mean, these are players that would probably, if there was no cash prize associated with it, they would still be just as beaming at the end of it. And like you mentioned, Tyler seemed to just be a maestro when it came to his own deck, knowing his own matchups and practicing against what he had to come up against. And like you mentioned, against the aggro matchup, against the Chane matchup, which in itself is its own beast, against the other control matchups and such. There was one aspect. First of all, I just want to double back on this, the fact that you're saying you don't want to call it like a WWE match, but I would pay lots of money to hear Jim Ross and like have Ursa, when the Ursa token came out, and hear the Stone Cold glass break.
By golly.
Yeah, exactly. By God, that's Ursa's music. That would be
exactly
freaking amazing. That would have been amazing. Things to think about in future tournaments, perhaps. Nonetheless,
sure.
There was a moment, and like you said, that I remember listening to it, and I rewatched that match a couple times, where you're saying, it's like, I think that he has it. Like you were actually quite confident in calling the fact that Sebastiano Cavallo, the Chane player in that finals, he had it. You're like, this is a massive turn for him. He's gonna get it. This is where he's gonna convert. And just like that, Tyler was able to just pump the brakes on that entire plan. And I don't know if how many soul shackles by the end of it, 15, 16, or it was just this absurd number.
The highest number I'd ever seen, for sure.
Right. Yeah. And it was all moot at that point, nonetheless. But for yourself in that position, and I know that you and I are both casters, and there's some certain pride that you want to have in knowing what the lines are, and you don't want to give away an outcome, and you kind of want to live in that moment. but the fact that you yourself as a caster may have been thrown off in the fact that like the players themselves are throwing you as a caster off because they're pulling off the stops on what could be lethal turns, and that's exciting from your standpoint too.
Oh, absolutely. There's that uncertainty, like, does he have it here? You're trying to build excitement. It's hard to keep up with every little thing, right? Like, people say, oh, it's easy to cast because, like, you get to see everything. You can see their hands sometimes. I think it actually makes it harder because you have so much more information all at once and you're trying to convey all of it at once. And yeah, I mean, you've been in the seat. You know how difficult it can be from both ends. And yeah, you're not always going to have, all the right things. They have a slightly different deck list. You're trying to pump up and hype up exactly one turn. Also, there's some professionalism that gets attached to it where, like, let's say, I did know that Tyler was going to win like 3 or 4 turns before, which it was, you could kind of see the writing on the wall the last few turns, right? Like Tyler had this, he was going to win, but there's that possibility that huge turn comes from Sebastiano, you're unsure, right? And so you want to pump that up. Like, you don't want people to like tune out or not have, like, you don't want to ruin it for somebody as well, right? You don't want to be on turn 6 to be like, well, there's no way the Chane player can really come back from here, so it's pretty much over, but we're gonna have to sit here for 10 minutes while the Prism deck does its thing for the next 6-7 turns, right? You also don't want to do that. But again, like, you don't want people at home to feel dumb. You don't want to dumb it down for them, but at the same time, like, it's an entertainment thing, right? Like, you're trying to do your job well and tell them what's going on the screen with the information that you have.
There's a fine balance, I find, where, again,
absolutely.
I mean, when you're, especially in the ever so loving and tolerant eyes of the Twitch chat, which are always out there, if you are calling a match, you cannot be the one where there's, a few turns left to say, oh, it's all over, because no one's going to care anymore. But at the same time, you have to play to it and sort of build a little bit of the tension and a little bit of that narrative and continue to drive that narrative. Whereas some of the people will just think that you're an idiot. You're like, how could he possibly think that there's a chance it's over? For us, we know that it's probably in the bag, but we still need to pump those tires just a little bit to make sure that there's a little bit more, runway for this game to go.
Honestly,
yeah.
There's a thing too where, just to use the word you used, it's I'm almost supposed to be the idiot, right? Like, as play-by-play, like, I'm supposed to bring it into everyone's home, right? And idiot's probably not the word I want to use here. I'm supposed to make this, what's the right word I'm looking here? Approachable for everybody at home. And like, yeah, we've done this in other games too, like Magic or poker, where like, I can do this and talk about this in a way that it's going to alienate everybody but like the top 1% of like super competitive players. But that's not your target audience either, right? A lot of these people are seeing this game for the first time as like a big thing. Even if they played it, they've never seen it on Twitch before, right? They may have watched a YouTube video or like, watched the professor's YouTube video or something on it. Like, that's the first way I learned, right? Was going to the professor's YouTube and seeing his how to play video. And I had never actually seen the cards in person, stuff like that. So like, you want to make sure that you give them a good product and stuff, right? So like, at the same time, it's just like you said, like, I'm trying to make this as approachable for everybody. That is my main job. That's why I was hired, right? They didn't want another expert in the booth. Like, why would you need one? You've got two sitting right next to me in Red Zone, Rogue, and Armada, right? Who've put, years into working into this game already. I've put weeks, but my job is to make it feel like, we're sitting at home, you're watching it on your computer, you're watching it on your television, whatever, and I'm just sitting right next to you talking about the game, right? I'm just like the sports announcer that you watch. If you watch sports, whatever, I'm just kind of guiding you through the game, and we're giving you little tidbits here or there. If you look away for a minute, I'm still there to bring you back in and tell you what's going on and really paint that picture for you, right? So yeah, like, sometimes I'm going to miss things, or sometimes I'm not going to call stuff right, or I'm going to call it a little differently than you see it. But at the end of the day, I'm just trying to make an entertaining product for everybody at home.
And you've done an excellent job of that, Tannon. And again, I want to thank you very, very much for being a part of this podcast. We do have one more segment. It's called Go Again. And we're going to ask you some little bit of rapid-fire questions, so I hope you're ready for that, Tannon, because we're going right around the corner. We're going to be hitting up that. So if you're ready, ladies and gentlemen, we will be back just after this quick commercial break. Hang tight, friends. We'll be right back. Instant Speed is proudly supported by BCW Supplies. If you need protection for your cards, be it sleeves, deck boxes, storage, organizational tools, or hey, are you a comic book collector, a coin collector? BCW Supplies has your hookup. Use the code ISP10. Get 10% off all of your orders. Go to bcwsupplies.com. BCW, protect, store, display. All right, friends, we're about to go wide here with Tannon Grace, as I've got an arsenal full of questions. This is called Go Again, rapid fire again. As short or as long as you want to make them, but we're going again on each one of these, Tannon. So until that question combat chain is closed, you're on the hook here, buddy. You ready to roll?
Yeah, let's go.
All right, question number 1. Is Chane fair or is he overpowered?
I'm going to go with overpowered. It's pretty obvious that it's the quote-unquote best deck in the entire game. The fact that once you start to get running into Soul Shackle's turns 4, 5, and 6, that you're getting, double the hand size of your opponent a lot of times if your bandages are good, just make the deck really, really hard to keep up with in those mid to late turns of the game. Yeah,
one of my favorite things is the rule book that says you draw up to your intellect. Well, unless you're Chane. That's a holder.
Unless you're Chane, yeah. Exactly.
All right, here we go. The slickest play that you have ever witnessed in cards. Now, this can go as far back as you want.
Oh, in any card game? I thought we were talking
why
about
not? Sure.
Flesh and Blood. So for Flesh and Blood, I think some of the coolest ones, just to shout out Tyler yet again, the winner of our event, is he had a lot of cards in his Prism deck that you could play at instant speed, and he would have them in his arsenal, and it would make people commit a Command and Conquer, which is a very good card a lot of these decks to block with against the Prism decks, and they would try to make sure they got this Command and Conquer in to get his card in arsenal, and he'd just be like, okay, we'll pay for that card to come out of my arsenal, and now that card and your whole line and your whole turn are just a lot less effective than you originally thought. As for some of the slickest ones, it's hard to go like super into it without, if the people don't know the games. But really just like anytime a player just demonstrates an absolute understanding and mastery of what they're doing versus what the other person's doing and just gets to play, circles around them, that kind of thing. Because like you get that a lot in like poker and Magic, but you'd have to talk like about real minutia type stuff of the matchup and stuff like that.
It's kind of like when you fold like a suited king queen because your opponent's holding like the ace king or something like that.
Yeah. When someone just demonstrates a higher level of knowledge than the other person, and then sometimes when the other person realizes it too, you see that look on their face of like, oh, I just got that kind of thing. And I've been on both ends of it. It doesn't feel good, or it's the best moment of your life. So,
all right. So what's the worst play you've ever witnessed?
Probably some stuff that I've done, honestly. I've definitely messed up where, so like in Magic, we had these things called PTQs that were pretty much the RTNs of Flesh and Blood. It would qualify you for like a Pro Tour or whatever. And I remember once I was about to win to make the finals of one, and I just brain farted, whatever you want to call it, where I just said something. I knew when to do it. Like I knew the timing of it. Like I needed my phase to shift or whatever. And I just said, do this thing in response, instead of do half of it in response, finish the other half of it after what they're doing finishes. And I just kind of like really, really messed up. And it was like very embarrassing. I was definitely seasoned enough to know the difference and know the correct line there, and just really, really messed it up, and then cost myself probably a free trip to, I think that one was for Hawaii or Japan.
Oh.
So I've cost myself a free trip to an event there, which that hurt.
Yeah, and I'm guessing that you've never sort of messed up those little marginal like timing plays since, have you? Yeah.
No, if I make one of those mistakes, I never do again.
So who's the best Flesh and Blood player that you know?
So probably somebody that I met over the weekend. I met Brendan Patrick and Dante Delfico this weekend, and just their understanding of the game seemed to be at a different level than anyone that I had come into contact with. I got to kind of like interview them, talked about the game. They walked me through some of the really complicated things that were going on with Chane. I was like asking players that were like known for what they were, doing. Like I went and sought out like a really good Katsu player, went and sought out a really good, Prism player if I could. I would love to have talked to Tyler before the game, if I would have known, but those two definitely stood out. Brendan Patrick's YouTube channel was really influential in some of my being prepared for this event, especially the video where he showed how Saber's Bolton worked, because that was a hyped deck coming into this event. It was doing really well in Europe right before. We ended up not getting really any of it on camera. I thought a deck would top 8 with it, so it kind of like maybe underperformed a little bit on the weekend, but I needed to have at least a little understanding of what was going on. It's kind of like what you talked about. In fact, I was in a Discord with you, and you talked about losing to that deck, and the guy, showing you, and I was like, I need to look at this and see what this is, because I have no idea how a deck does that. So
I took the bullet for you there, buddy.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So what is the class that you think needs the most support?
Well, we're about to get it, but definitely I would have said Ranger coming into this set quite a bit. So we're about to get some of it, but we'll see. There's a lot of hype thinking it's going to be good enough, and I'm not sure if it's actually going to be good enough. So I'm going to still go with Ranger with some optimism.
All right, so what's the most underrated hero right now, pre-Tales of Aria?
Am I still allowed to say Prism, even though it won this weekend?
Absolutely say Prism, because that is a spicy pick given the fact that it just won the Calling Las Vegas.
Yeah, well, I thought it was kind of like the most bland hero coming into the event. You're just like, oh, I got these big dumb angels attack you, hope something hits, and then like I didn't realize how much of play it had. I think some people at home probably didn't realize how much of play and how it could switch roles. So I'm gonna go with that and like kind of the Guardian heroes. I think we're about to get a lot of big stuff for them, so we'll see if that continues as well.
All right, so what was your worst mistake that you've ever made on a broadcast?
Okay, so I got some funny ones. I'll go for this weekend. I made the mistake of saying the phrase like, "You guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back." I try to use gender neutral pronouns as much as I possibly can, for obvious reasons, and I just want to. I never say the phrase "you guys." And I don't know what happened, but I said it going into one of the commercials, right? And I immediately took my headset off and got really angry. And my director was like, what's going on? I was like, dude, I said you guys. And he's like, yeah, just don't do it again. And I was like, I don't understand. I never say that. But it was kind of like a golfer getting the yips.
Oh, yeah.
Where once I said it, I ended up saying it again. And I was just like so mad at myself because I never do that. I pride myself on like, being better about that, saying they, them, just something in general, y'all. Because I'm from the South.
It's like having a bro sneak into like something that you're saying. Like, where did this come from? Like, what?
Who am I?
Exactly. Yeah. It just kind of infiltrates your day, and you're like, "Am I nervous? Like, what the hell happened?"
Exactly. I think maybe some nerves got to me. Absolutely, because I'm a little more unsure of myself than I normally am. If it's Magic or poker or something or Hearthstone, I can call back on that wealth of knowledge that I have. Like, let's say it's a new set, I haven't learned it as much, but I've got years and years of knowledge. This I have like weeks and weeks. One of the other ones, this is something that I was involved in. It wasn't necessarily me, but this is a funny story. I'm not going to name names, but I was doing a live cast once, and I had a co-caster, and we're just going back and forth chatting. We're vamping. For anybody at home that doesn't know what vamping is, when you're doing casting, things happen, and they're like, hey, we need to fill 5 minutes. Hey, we need to fill 10 minutes while they get this thing ready, and we don't want to go to commercial, so just talk, right? And that's one of the main reasons they hire people like us, you, me, whoever, is we're just good at talking, right? We can fill dead air. I've got questions ready to go. I've got conversations ready to go. And so my co-caster is going, and he's talking, and we're like getting into a real conversation, and it's like real casual, we're like talking back and forth like you would your buddy. It's real sincere, and he just drops an F-bomb. And we're not supposed to cuss on this broadcast. And the thing that's bad about me is I freeze, right? Because I'm just like, he just said the F word, And like I could see it on his face, right? He doesn't do the oh my god face, but like his eyes got bigger, right? And he like stiffened up, And so did I. And you know how this is. We have an earpiece in, and your director can talk to you, and my director's going, say something, say anything, because it's like a good solid 5 to 7 seconds that I don't say anything. And that doesn't sound like a long time, but on a broadcast, when you're going back and forth and talking a lot, 7 seconds of silence is forever, especially after something like that.
It's an eternity. So, it just festers there.
Yeah. So that was like one of the biggest mistakes I've ever made, was not covering for my co-caster, because you got to do that, right? Like you got to help each other out. The other person fumbles or messes up in some way, flubs what they're doing, can't remember the name of a card. You're supposed to jump in and help them, right? Because you're a team.
Yeah,
kind of thing. And
it's the yes and strategy of improv, of just like whatever they do, you just got to go with it. And at that point, say something. You weren't just going to go on top of them with something even more vulgar, but nonetheless, at the same time, I can definitely feel you on that one. But man, oh man, especially when it's like rigid rules like that of just don't say anything bad. I just picture you, deer in the headlights, completely frozen. Tannon Grace, you have been awesome. One last question for Go Again, and then we'll close the combat chain here, buddy. Sure. What does Flesh and Blood look like in 5 years?
The number one niche game in card games. And I don't mean that in any kind of bad way. It's just, it's no digital, so you're not going to have that big, huge following that you could possibly, like, you're missing out on that, right? Like the people who could play on their computer, could play on their phone. But when it comes to games that are like second to the ones that have been in the upper echelon and will stay there, I'm thinking the big properties that have been there for like 5, 10, 15 years. I think Flesh and Blood will be around, will be strong, but will be one of the top niche games for sure.
My man, I sincerely appreciate it. This combat chain is closed. That's it for Go Again. Questions have been answered, and the wonderful Tannon Grace, the official caster of the Calling Las Vegas, got to go ahead and not only call the final, but anoint the winner and hand him his prize. Tannon Grace, for all those who might not know where to catch you and all of your wonderful musings, where are you available for the adoring public to go ahead and just get more Tannon?
Sure. Easiest place to get me is on Twitter, and that's at the Tannon Grace. Very easy. It's spelled phonetically, but it's Tannon. Everything else should be easy enough for you to find. You can check Channel Fireball's stuff. They tweeted about it and stuff a lot. So did Flesh and Blood over the weekend if you're looking for anything like that. And then you can find everything else there. Like all my links to anything else that I do is on there. Like I do a podcast for Magic. I do some involvement with that stuff as well. And that's about it, really. That's just the easiest way to find me.
Hey, straightforward, and that's what we like here, my friend. Thank you so much again for being on the Instant Speed podcast again. Before we go, thanks again. Congratulations on your success and your ongoing involvement with Flesh and Blood.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Well,